Welcome to my channel. Subscribe and enjoy my new stories every day. The weekend sun angled through the kitchen window, slicing across the old wooden table where I nursed a half-empty bottle of beer. Its warm rays did little to thaw the chill that settled in my chest that afternoon. The hum of suburban life droned outside, a lawnmower's steady growl, the bark of a dog 2 houses down. Inside, there was only silence, the kind that pressed against your ears and made you second-guess reality. Jenna, my wife of 14 years, sat at the dining table, backlit by the sinking sun. She was scrolling on her phone, occasionally smirking at whatever flashed on the screen. The sight used to be familiar, comforting even. Now, it was the source of a nagging ache, like an itch just beyond reach. The clues had stacked up slowly, new perfumes, unexplained absences, her laughter a bit too forced when I asked about work. Still, I held on to denial like a buoy in turbulent waters. The signs were there, but I wanted them to be figments of an overactive mind. That is, until today. "You look happier than usual," I said, my voice light, conversational. It was the kind of line married people toss back and forth without thinking. Her head jerked up, eyes meeting mine for a split second before darting back to the screen. "Just glad the week's over," she said, the words landing too quickly, like she had rehearsed them. The silence returned, stretching out as I watched her, taking in every detail, the way her fingers toyed with the edge of her phone, the slight tension in her jaw. It was as if her face had learned to mask what her heart couldn't conceal. My mind raced, trying to latch onto a moment, any moment that would reassure me she was still mine. But doubt was relentless. I stood up, the chair legs scraping against the tiles, and wandered into the living room. I had convinced myself time and again not to be that man, the suspicious husband, the one who let paranoia gnaw at him. But my resolve was weak, and today it cracked. Jenna had left her phone on the table, screen glowing with the telltale sign of an unread message. My gaze flicked to the patio doors, where she now stood, arms crossed, staring out at nothing. I inched closer to the table, heart thudding in my chest. The message was innocuous at first, a simple, "Hey, can't wait to see you later." But it wasn't the words that turned my stomach, it was the sender, Greg. Greg. A name I barely knew except from her occasional mentions of a coworker. A guy she sometimes talked about in passing, like a blip on the radar of her life. Now, it felt like that name had been etched into the back of my mind with a searing brand. "Everything okay?" Jenna's voice cut through the haze. She was back inside, looking at me with an eyebrow raised, the shadow of suspicion clouding her eyes. I forced a smile, but it must have looked as brittle as it felt. "Yeah, just thinking." I moved away from the table, leaving the phone untouched but the realization festering. Jenna's expression didn't soften. She stood there for a moment longer before shrugging, picking up the phone, and tucking it into her pocket. "I'm going to get ready for tonight," she said, heading down the hall. The click of her heels on the wood floors echoed through the house. I sank into the couch, the leather cool against my skin. It was as if the room had shrunk, pressing in on me with the weight of the unsaid. The name Greg pulsed in my thoughts, a taunt that wouldn't relent. The urge to confront her surged, but I swallowed it down, clenching the bottle until my knuckles ached. The memory of how we used to be played in my mind like a cruel montage, nights spent tangled together in laughter, mornings where she would make pancakes just because she knew I loved them. Was that all an illusion? Was I clinging to the ruins of something that had already crumbled? I needed proof, something more than a gut feeling or a text that could be brushed off with a lie. The idea made me feel dirty, as if by searching for confirmation, I would be the one responsible for tearing us apart. But the alternative was worse, living in the dark, pretending that the walls of our home weren't already shaking from the lies hidden within. The next few hours dragged. Jenna emerged from the bedroom in a dress I hadn't seen before. It was crimson, clinging in all the right places, making her look like the woman I had fallen for a decade and a half ago. My stomach twisted. Was it for me or for him? You look nice, I said, hating how hollow the word sounded. Thanks, she replied, barely meeting my gaze. It's just a work thing. And then she was gone, the door closing with a soft click that echoed like the slam of a prison cell. I waited a few minutes, the seconds stretching out like hours, then grabbed my phone. The urge to call her, to demand an explanation, rose and fell in my chest. Instead, I scrolled through old pictures of us on vacation, our smiles wide, eyes crinkled with real joy. Proof, I reminded myself. I needed proof before I let the fury consume me. The next step was clear, even if it made my stomach churn. I found her email on the shared laptop, the one we both used for work and reminders. She had left it logged in, the trust between us unspoken and unguarded. My fingers hovered over the keyboard, every keystroke feeling like a betrayal of the man I used to be. But when I opened her inbox, what I saw made the room spin. There, tucked away in a folder labeled work stuff, was a chain of emails, each more damning than the last. Words like, last night was amazing and, next time, I'll bring the wine, leapt out at me, turning the embers in my chest into a wildfire. The phone rang, startling me. It was my friend, Alex, his name a momentary anchor to reality. I ignored it, eyes locked on the screen, each message another blow. I clicked on the last one, sent just that morning, can't wait to see you tonight. I'll make sure everything's ready. It felt like my body was detached, a hollow shell filled only with the sound of blood roaring in my ears. I slammed the laptop shut, my breath coming in ragged gasps. This was it, the proof I thought I needed but now wished I could unsee. The house felt emptier that night than it ever had before. Jenna was gone, wrapped in whatever false reality she'd constructed, and I was left in the silence, grappling with what I'd uncovered. The clock on the wall ticked mercilessly, each second slicing into my patience like a razor. I paced the living room, glancing out the window every few minutes as if she might appear in the driveway, the explanation I needed on her lips. But deep down, I knew she wasn't coming home anytime soon. Not until she'd finished whatever work thing she claimed to have. The memory of her red dress flashed in my mind, and my fists clenched until my nails dug into my palms. I couldn't stay here, trapped in this stifling void with my thoughts and the echo of her lies. I grabbed my jacket and stepped outside, the night air biting my skin and providing a welcome distraction from the rage brewing inside me. I ended up at a small bar downtown, one Jenna and I used to visit when we first started dating. The place hadn't changed much, the same scratched wood paneling, the faint scent of spilled beer and fried food lingering in the air. It used to be cozy, a refuge. Now it felt foreign, almost mocking, as if the memories of shared laughs and stolen kisses were lurking just out of reach, taunting me. I slid into a stool at the far end, where the shadows kept the rest of the room at bay. The bartender, an older man with a gray beard, nodded at me without a word and poured a whiskey. He must have seen the look in my eyes, the look of someone trying to drink away the truth. "Rough night?" he asked after setting the glass in front of me. His voice was gravelly, familiar in the way only an old bartender's could be. "Something like that," I muttered, swirling the amber liquid before taking a long, burning sip. A man in his 40s, with the weathered look of someone who'd seen too much, took the seat next to me. I recognized him vaguely, a guy named Paul who worked construction. He'd been here the few times Jenna and I had stopped by, laughing with his buddies or nodding off at the bar after a long day. "You look like you've been hit by a truck, man," he said, not unkindly. I chuckled bitterly. "Something like that." Paul leaned forward, elbows resting on the bar. "Women," he said knowingly, as if that single word carried the weight of countless untold stories. I didn't respond, but he took my silence as agreement. "Let me guess. She's off doing God knows what, while you're here trying to piece it together." I stared at him, the raw truth of it cutting deeper than anything he could know. The whiskey burned less going down the second time, but it didn't numb the pain. "You ever been there?" I asked, more to myself than him. Paul nodded slowly. Yeah, but I didn't find out until it was too late. She packed her bags and left before I could even ask her why. Took the kids, the car, hell, even the damn dog. He let out a humorless laugh, staring into his own glass as if it held answers. Did you get them back? I asked, the words heavier than I intended. Some things, sure. The rest? You learn to live without it. He looked at me, eyes rimmed red with weariness. But don't let her make a fool of you, not while there's still time. I nodded, the advice sticking to me like glue. I finished my drink, left some bills on the bar, and stepped back into the night, Paul's words echoing in my mind. I wouldn't be made a fool, not anymore. The house was dark when I returned, only the faint glow from the streetlight seeping through the living room window. I sat on the couch, staring at the spot where Jenna had left her phone earlier, as if it would reveal more secrets. The silence was suffocating, so I grabbed my laptop and opened it, the screen casting a cold light across my face. I scrolled through her emails again, combing through every line. Each one read like a punch, a series of inside jokes and sweet nothings that spoke of late nights and shared drinks. Each one was a reminder that I had been living with a stranger, someone who could weave stories around me without a hint of guilt. The sound of a car in the driveway jolted me. I snapped the laptop shut, heart hammering as the front door creaked open. Jenna stepped inside, looking momentarily startled to see me sitting in the dark. She blinked, adjusting to the dim light. Thomas? What are you doing up? Her voice carried the innocent lilt that had once reassured me, but now it grated like nails on a chalkboard. Couldn't sleep, I said, keeping my tone even. I forced my hands to stay relaxed on my lap. The last thing I needed was for her to see the storm inside me. Oh. She set her purse down and slipped out of her heels, wincing as if they had been a burden. Well, I hope you can get some rest soon. She moved to walk past me, but I stood, blocking her path. Where were you tonight, Jenna? The question hung between us, thickening the air. Her eyes widened just a fraction before she looked down, a practiced move to buy time. I told you, a work thing, she said, the lie smooth, almost automatic. I took a step closer, and she backed up, the edge of the couch pressing into her calves. Greg, I said, the name cutting through the room like a blade. Who is he really? Her eyes snapped up to meet mine, the mask slipping for just a moment. Fear, guilt, anger, all of it swirled together before she pushed it back down. He's just a friend from work, she said, too quickly, too defensively. I scoffed, the sound foreign in the quiet room. Just a friend who says he can't wait to see you tonight. Her eyes went wide again, and this time there was no hiding the panic. I saw the emails, Jenna. All of them. The silence stretched into an abyss. She opened her mouth, then closed it, eyes darting around the room as if searching for an escape. It's not what you think, she finally said, but the words were empty, hollow. The trust between us, once so solid, now felt like it was crumbling into dust. Then tell me, I demanded, the last vestiges of restraint slipping. Tell me what it is. She hesitated, and in that moment, the last piece of hope I'd clung to shattered. The room fell into a silence so profound it seemed as though time itself had paused, holding its breath along with us. Jenna stood in front of me, caught between guilt and defiance. The glow of the street lamp filtered through the window, casting her in a half-light that made her look both familiar and foreign. Thomas, I'm sorry, she whispered, finally breaking the silence. The apology was worse than the lie. It was the confirmation that everything I feared was true. My stomach knotted, twisting with a mix of betrayal and rage. I had replayed this moment countless times in my head, wondering if she'd admit it, lie, or cry. In all my imagined confrontations, I never prepared for the simple sting of her saying sorry. That's it? I asked, voice tight, each word a struggle to keep calm. That's all you have to say? Jenna's eyes shimmered with tears she didn't let fall. Her lips trembled, forming words that wouldn't come. Finally, she sighed and sat down on the armrest of the couch, shoulders slumped. I didn't mean for it to happen, Thomas. I didn't go looking for anything. I sat down across from her, the coffee table between us like an unspoken barrier. But it did happen, I said, more statement than question. The anger in my chest was smoldering, a fire that hadn't yet erupted. I needed it to erupt. I needed her to see it, to know the damage she had wrought. Yes, she admitted, eyes dropping to her hands. It happened. The confirmation left me numb. It was like the moment right after you've been punched, when the world goes quiet, waiting for pain to flood in. I leaned forward, staring at her as though I could find answers in her downcast eyes. Why, Jenna? Was it something I did? Was it me? She looked up sharply, as if I had struck her. No, she said, shaking her head so hard her hair whipped across her face. Thomas, this wasn't about you. It was never about you. Then what was it about? My voice rose, finally breaking through the icy control I'd forced on myself. What was it, Jenna? Because from where I'm standing, it looks like you threw away everything we had for some fling with a coworker. It wasn't just a fling, she snapped back, a spark of defiance breaking through her guilt. Her eyes locked with mine, daring me to press further. I was lonely, Thomas. I felt invisible. You were always working, always wrapped up in your own world. And I needed. I was working for us. I roared, slamming my fist against the table so hard the empty glass toppled and rolled off the edge, shattering against the floor. Jenna flinched, and for a moment, fear shadowed her face. The sight of it cooled my rage, replacing it with a hollow ache. I did everything I could for this family, I continued, voice hoarse. I trusted you. I never questioned you, even when I should have. Jenna's tears spilled over, tracing silent paths down her cheeks. She reached out as if to touch my arm, but I leaned back, out of reach. The distance between us grew more profound, more permanent. I know, she said softly. And that's what makes this so much worse. I stood up, unable to sit any longer. I needed to move, to do something before I exploded or crumpled under the weight of it all. How long? I asked, pacing the room. My heart hammered in my chest, and I felt lightheaded. How long has this been going on? She swallowed, the silence pressing down like a vice. Almost a year. A year. The number echoed in my head, reshaping the last 12 months of my life, turning every shared dinner, every night spent next to her in bed, into a lie. I laughed then, a sharp, bitter sound that seemed to startle both of us. God, Jenna. A year? How could you come home to me, to us, after being with him? Her gaze dropped, the guilt and shame now fully exposed. I thought I could end it. I tried, but I didn't. I ran a hand through my hair, gripping it as if that could keep my thoughts from scattering. And tonight? I asked, voice trembling. Was tonight part of your work thing, too? Yes, she admitted, eyes closing as though she could block out the reality between us. The fury inside me flared again, threatening to spill over. You stood here, Jenna. Right in this room, looking me in the eye, and you lied to my face. You put on that dress, kissed me goodbye, and walked out the door to be with him. Her face crumpled, the sobs finally breaking free. I know, Thomas. I know what I did. And I'm so sorry. The sight of her crying should have made me feel something, pity, sadness, even a flicker of compassion. But there was nothing left. I stared at her, wondering who this woman was. She wore Jenna's face, had Jenna's voice, but the person I loved, the one I trusted, was gone. I need you to leave, I said, the words heavy and final. She looked up, shocked. Thomas, please. No, I cut her off, shaking my head. You don't get to beg me to fix this, not after everything. Pack a bag and go. Tonight. She stared at me, eyes wide with disbelief, but the look turned to resignation as she realized I wasn't going to change my mind. She stood slowly, the weight of her guilt making her movements sluggish. Where am I supposed to go? To him, I said coldly, the last piece of kindness slipping away. Go to Greg. With that, I turned and walked to the door, opening it and waiting until she picked up her purse and shoes. As she passed me, she paused, as if she might say something, but the silence between us said everything that needed to be said. When the door closed behind her, I stood there for a moment, my hand still on the knob, staring at the empty street beyond. The world outside continued as if nothing had changed, but inside, everything had. The house felt impossibly quiet. The only sound was the ticking of the clock, counting down the moments of a life that would never be the same. I walked to the shattered glass on the floor, picking up the jagged pieces one by one, each shard slicing into my skin, a pain that finally matched the hollow ache in my chest. The weeks that followed Jenna's departure were a blur of noise and silence, of anger and regret. The first few days, I expected her to call or come back, to plead one last time, but she never did. Instead, the silence thickened, heavy with the weight of everything unsaid. Each morning, I woke up hoping it had all been a nightmare, but the cold side of the bed was a cruel reminder that it was all real. I kept myself busy, diving headfirst into work and spending long hours at the office. It was the only place where I could numb myself, where the clatter of keyboards and the hum of monitors drowned out the hollow ache in my chest. But when night came, and I returned to an empty house, the walls seemed to close in, pressing down with the force of memories I didn't want to relive. One evening, after another long day, I came home to find a familiar envelope on the table just inside the front door. It was plain, cream-colored, with my name written in Jenna's elegant handwriting. I stood there, staring at it, my pulse racing. She hadn't reached out in any way since that night, and seeing her handwriting felt like a ghost from a life I no longer recognized. With a shaking hand, I opened the envelope and unfolded the letter inside. The paper trembled as I read. Thomas. I know this is the last thing you want, but I needed to write to you, to say what I couldn't that night. I didn't leave because I wanted to. I left because you told me to, and because I knew I had destroyed everything. But there's more you need to know. I never meant for it to go this far. That night, when you found out, I realized how much I had lost, how much I had hurt you. I knew that leaving was the only way to give you peace, even if it meant I could never ask for forgiveness. Greg was never what I thought he was. I know that sounds like another excuse, another way to push blame away from myself, but it's the truth. He was just another lie in a life I built to distract myself from the emptiness I felt when we stopped talking, stopped seeing each other the way we used to. I don't deserve your pity, and I'm not asking for it. I just wanted you to know that I'm leaving town. It's better for both of us if I do. I hope someday you find a way to be happy again, to rebuild what I destroyed. I am so sorry, Thomas. For everything. Jenna. I read the letter over and over until the words blurred, my vision clouded with tears I had refused to shed. Anger flared again, hot and sharp, but it died quickly, leaving only the cold, numbing weight of grief. The next morning, I called out of work, unable to muster the energy to pretend I was okay. The house felt even more oppressive now, filled with the echoes of her laughter, the ghost of her presence. I went for a drive, hoping the open road would clear my head. I didn't have a destination in mind, but my car seemed to know where to go. I ended up at a park we used to visit, one with winding trails and a small lake where we'd feed the ducks. The air was crisp, tinged with the scent of wet leaves. I walked to the water's edge, hands deep in my pockets, the wind biting at my face. A few kids ran by, their laughter bright and carefree, a sharp contrast to the leaden silence inside me. I envied them, their simplicity, the way life hadn't yet taught them the cruel lessons of betrayal and regret. My phone buzzed in my pocket, breaking the silence. I pulled it out, the screen flashing with Alex's name. I answered with a sigh. "Hey. Thomas, where are you?" His voice was tight, urgent. "Just out," I said, glancing around the park. "Why?" There was a pause, and when he spoke again, his voice was softer, hesitant. "You haven't heard, have you?" "Heard what?" The hair on the back of my neck stood up. "It's Jenna," he said, the words like a punch to the gut. "She was in an accident last night. A car crash." The world seemed to tilt, my vision tunneling as I staggered back a step. "Is she?" The question caught in my throat. "She didn't make it, Thomas." "I'm so sorry." I didn't remember dropping the phone, but suddenly it was on the ground, Alex's voice muffled and distant. The sound of the kids' laughter faded, the park spinning around me. I sank to my knees, the cold seeping through my jeans as I stared at the lake. The last words Jenna had written in the letter burned in my mind, "I hope someday you find a way to be happy again." But that hope now felt like a cruel joke. The finality of it hit me like a wave, drowning me in guilt and regret. I had sent her away that night, pushed her out the door with my anger. The last words we'd exchanged weren't ones of love or forgiveness, but ones filled with blame and pain. And now, there would be no chance to rewrite that ending, no way to fix what was shattered. The wind picked up, tugging at the letter still clutched in my hand. The ink smeared from the tears that fell onto it, blurring her words. But it didn't matter. I knew them by heart now, each one a reminder that sometimes, even when we think we're doing what's best, the cost is far greater than we could ever imagine. I sat there as the sun sank lower, the world around me turning gray, and I realized that some wounds never heal.